And so she's laying in a hospital bed, paralyzed, knowing that she's killed all 3 of her children.
While he's away, she murders 3 of her children. She had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old.
And so her mind was in a state that was so altered that it wasn't her that did those things.
So sad.
When she gets back to herself, if she ever does, there's gonna be no punishment or anything that could make her feel worse than she's going to feel.
They never said she doesn't need to be alone with those children.
Thanks for watching the Carolina Justice Report today. I'm Rainey Romero with the lovely law firm here for another episode. Today we're chatting about Lindsay Clancy from Massachusetts and the horrific case. Stay with us. Thanks for joining us today. We have moms on the panel and Sarah, who's going to be a mom at some point, right? So we have attorney Sharday Crawford, Amy Lawrence, and Sarah Austin here. And we're chatting about kind of something really sad today, a story that just happened, but it's important to bring light to, and I think a lot of people will get something out of this episode. But Sharday, why don't you start us off and tell us kind of what happened with Lindsay Clancy?
Okay. There's been a case recently, a woman by the name of Lindsay Clancy, who is a labor and delivery nurse. Back on January 26th, she sends her husband out of the home. He goes to CVS to pick up some medicine and to pick up some food for the home. And while he's away, she murders 3 of her children. She had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old. And while he's gone, they say that she takes an exercise band and strangles all 3 children. And then immediately after doing that, she then slits both of her wrists as well as her own neck, and then jumps from the 2nd-story window of her home. They even mentioned that while her husband was gone to the store, that she tracked when he would be coming back home on her Apple Maps thing. So she's been arrested, and she just went up for bond, where her defense attorney brought up the issue of postpartum psychosis and postpartum depression.
So she did not die from all that.
She did not die. She was actually paralyzed from the waist down as a result of it. And some information ended up coming out where she had kept notations in her phone about experiencing postpartum anxiety, about going back to work because her maternity leave was coming to an end. And just having some issues where when she had the youngest child with 2 children, if you're a mother and you have young kids that are close in age, it is very hard. You're not able to give the attention that you would to the oldest when they were the only child to the youngest. And so she had expressed some issues with how she couldn't really give the attention to the youngest child as she did the oldest one.
I think we all felt that. I mean, anybody with multiple kids, you feel like that, like you aren't given, you're not able to wallow and give your littlest what they need, like you did the other ones, right? The other one, right? Yeah. The oldest. I guess, and we know that she was being treated for postpartum, right? That she had went and begged for help, and they had her, and according to her defense attorney, she was on a bunch of medicines.
A cocktail of medications, things like Klonopin, Prozac, Zoloft, and if you've ever been on, if you've ever been, yes, all right. If you've ever been treated for anything, you know that a sleeping pill makes you crazy and groggy, and then you combine that with any type of depression meds, they make you feel wonky, they can make you feel zombie-like, they can have all kinds of side effects. So when you start adding in multiple drugs, I can only imagine what that was doing to her body and her mind.
And we know that her husband was at her OBGYN the week before, begging for help, right? And saying she's like a zombie, something's not right, I need help. And they never told the father, and I think this is a big deal. They never said she doesn't need to be alone with those children, knowing everything that they knew. And she was keeping up like a little diary in her notes of how she was feeling and why. Because as a labor and delivery nurse, she knew that postpartum was real and that she needed to be documenting these things. So when she goes and talks to her doctor, she's got it all right there. I mean, we all wish our as a lawyer, we have clients that get hurt and they don't mention all the things that are going on. So she's sitting here trying to help herself and help the doctors diagnose her and get her on the right path. And, this happens. And so she's laying in a hospital bed, paralyzed, knowing that she has killed all 3 of her children. And her husband, he wrote this beautiful, sad, pitiful letter to the world, saying that how much he loved her and asked that the world forgive her like he has, because he knew this was not her. And that even in their struggle of this postpartumness, they were going deeper and all these things, and like he was trying to understand her more and get her the help that she needed so desperately, and like the whole system just failed her. And we see that though as women, like we're told that we don't talk about postpartum, right? Yeah. We don't talk about it because that makes you a bad mom. At least that's how it's portrayed, and that's not the reality of life. I mean, you've got 2 babies, 1 on the way. I've got 2 kids. Shardae's got 3. And we know, I've never experienced postpartum depression, but my friends have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And watching them go through that and me going to their house and saying, hey, go take a shower, let's...
I actually
get
have
some
anxiety
sleep.
about this baby coming up, just because I've had a lot of friends recently who have had similar experiences with postpartum, and like them having the mindset to be like, I cannot be alone with these kids, and having their parents come into town to stay with them and sleep with them. And I love this husband for trying to get her help and recognizing the signs, because I feel like so many times husbands don't know what's going on. They don't understand what they're supposed to do. And it was the case with my friend. He was trying to give her like tough love, like, you're fine.
Snap out of it.
Yes, you're fine. Mm-hmm. And that's not what she needed, And she was like, thank God my mom was here, because my mom would sleep, because she went 5 days without sleeping, which that by itself does crazy stuff to you, So I mean, I think that there is a lack of education on because when you have a baby, they say, how do you feel? Do you feel suicidal? No? Okay. Goodbye. You're good. Go home.
Good luck.
My youngest is about to turn 1 next month, and Angel baby. Whenever their analysis of whether I was going through postpartum was a little checklist at the pediatrician's office that's like laminated, and you wipe it off for the next person. And here's these like random questions that they're asking that you're like, why would I even admit to these things, right? And what are you going to do about it? And honestly, when my postpartum issues started showing up after Angel baby was when I was about to go to work and go back to work, and she wouldn't take a bottle. And I started to say, well, what am I going to do? And it created all this anxiety in me. And when I went to the OB, luckily my 6-week appointment was coming up, and I go to the OB and I'm like, hey, these are the things I'm feeling. And they gave me a checklist, right? Mm-hmm. And I started doing the checklist, and they come back in there and I'm like, yeah. So I know that you think it's just about work, but it's not just about work, right? It's not just about work. And when they started asking you these things, like whether it happened with your prior kids, I realized, heck, I was in such a haze after the prior kids. I don't know, but you know what? I can remember,
like there was no maternity leave with baby number 1.
No, there was no. I went back to work 2 weeks after I had, my youngest, with the pouch and all. And with Trey, I had just passed the bar. I was unemployed. I stopped working in order to have him, and so I didn't have maternity leave, and I didn't have a job to go back to. But I remember days where I was like, look here, Dennis, he's yours. And I went to Starbucks, I got a coffee, and I'd go sit in the parking lot and cry. And now I remember, right, I can look back at it to say that was probably postpartum. And I say that to say that as educated as I am, while having children already before, that there are signs that I didn't even see myself. And my significant other wouldn't be able to tell you now that that's what I was going through, because hey, heads up, men go through their own thing too. As a matter of fact, I remember going to the doctor and the doctor the pediatrician saying, oh, well, you know, Dad, you should probably get a checklist too. And I was like, checklist? He doesn't need a checklist. There's nothing wrong with him. And the doctor said, no, actually, fathers
just one more
go
thing for
through
me
it
to fill
too,
out for
right?
is what you were thinking.
You know, fathers go
Yeah.
through it too. And you know, and I can remember when he had his issues, that when I look back at it now,
Wow.
here's this man who was struggling with having his first child as well. So it's here.
Yeah.
It's a reality. Postpartum depression and psychosis are real. I've seen from a defense standpoint of awful things that women have done to their children that, you know, as a mom, we're like, God, it couldn't, oh, I would never do that, right?
Yeah.
Or,
How
but the
could you?
reality of it could always be me. And I always try to, in the criminal defense standpoint, I try to put myself in the shoes of my clients and say it could have always been me. DUI, traffic ticket, it doesn't matter what it is, right? It could always be me. We're all one bad choice, one mistake away from it being us. And I think the reality of it is that that's what we need to look at. But, you know, instead of saying this couldn't have been me, it's what can we do? How can
Maybe
we
like
change
it wasn't her, because I don't obviously haven't had any children, but the things you read about her being a labor and delivery nurse, that she was like everybody's angel and she was so detailed and she loved children and she loved being a mom. And so her mind was at a state that was so altered that it wasn't her that did those things.
So sad.
And you know, I know she's in the criminal justice the criminal justice system right now, but when she gets back to herself, if she ever does, there's going to be
She'll never forgive herself.
Major
there's going to be no
damage.
punishment or anything that could make her feel worse than she's going to
yeah.
feel. But it just, your mind is not. Your
not.
mind is not the same.
When you think about just like the hormonal effects of the hormones that you're carrying of your child plus yours, the alterations that happen in your body, there's a reason why they tell women to wait for a period of time before they have another child. Why? So the body can rest, it can reset itself, your hormones can reset itself, your brain can. When your child is up and awake at night and crying all the time, there's a reason why individuals are tortured, right, with lack of sleep.
Right.
Why do we do that? Why? Because it alters the brain.
Yeah.
You know, so when you are sleep deprived, it does a thing to you.
And then add in all the medicine that she was taking.
Right.
So not just postpartum, but then the medicine insane amounts of medicine they're trying to treat it with.
Yeah.
It just,
When you said, so in my head, I didn't think I've ever had postpartum, right? We had this whole talk beforehand, but as you're talking, like, I fucking cried. So when Knox was born, he was born five and a half weeks early.
Yeah.
And his lungs weren't developed. And I had to do, he was 5 days old and I had to do CPR on him. And I mean, he was as black as my shirt. And so when EMS arrived, first I got a volunteer fireman that came first. And he was a kid, like from a high school. And I remember him crying because he thought my baby was gonna die in front of him. Thought Justin was gonna punch the kid out, you know, because we're like taking turns breathing, trying to like get.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like use my mouth to suck everything that's because he had aspirated on his own vomit, and after that I went and got diet pills, not to lose weight, but to stay up all night and watch him breathe for 10 weeks. And when I think about that, and I didn't take a maternity leave either because I didn't have that luxury yet. You know, Justin and I had our own firm. It was just us two against the world, and so. When I think though back about it,
you were not yourself.
Right.
I know, and
those
it just
10
makes me
weeks?
cry thinking
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how like why I don't think I want to even admit that because like I've been taught that like that makes you less of a mom to feel all those feelings, right? So I couldn't imagine. This is the deal. I know that in this country, like everybody has these thoughts on women's reproductive rights and all that stuff, but like. We're not even taking in consideration women and their health after the babies are born, right?
Yep.
And we all have to do better. And you know, we say 100 times on the show, like that in which we do not acknowledge, we cannot change, right? So we got to start talking about it. It's like we have to like. My mom said the other day, like, why is so and so talking about on Facebook about their miscarriage? Like that, just because it feels so like
So personal.
It's so personal, but it just feels like we don't talk about stuff like that, right? Well, that's the problem. We don't talk
Right,
about
we
stuff
have
like
to
that.
end the stigma of it, right? That I should be able to share that I struggle as a mom. I can, now I swear every day on Instagram or Facebook or something, I see a meme that talks about overstimulation. Right? I'm not angry. I'm just overstimulated. The baby's crying. Someone's saying, "Mom, mom, ma, I have to help with homework." The blender's going, the laundry machine, and something's touching me too much. And I'm just overstimulated. I'm not angry. And so perhaps we should end the stigma and talk about the things that we experience after we have children, the things that men experience afterwards, how hard it is being a parent. And that doesn't mean that we can't say, "I love my children," but that doesn't mean that sometimes it's hard. It doesn't mean that when I woke up,
most of the time it's hard,
right? That when I wake up, and I still to this day wake up at least 6 times during the night to breastfeed. Do you know what? I haven't slept 8 hours. And God knows how long. I don't know what it feels like. When the first night I get 8 hours, first of all, my health app on my phone is going to be like, bing, bing, bing. You hit the lottery.
Go,
right?
achieve.
But, I think that we just need to talk about these things. And I think that the next problem is that when you get to the legal aspect of it, postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis are not recognized as defenses. It's like they don't exist. It's you did a bad thing, and that's what this is. And there's nobody wants to acknowledge that this is why it happened. We go all around it. We have cases right here in our county. Alexander was the female's last name, where she drove across North Carolina state line, came here, and disposed threw her baby into the pond right there at Tanger Outlets, and then continued driving all the way into Aner until she got rear-ended someone, got into a car accident. And the doctors at the ER are saying this is postpartum psychosis. They didn't even know. She's asking, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Where's my baby?"
She was asking where her baby was.
And and it's documented in the medical records about postpartum psychosis.
Wow.
And so here, years later, where someone's being found not competent and not being able to stand trial, like this is something that exists, whether we want to ignore its existence or not, because we can't fathom the fact that a woman would do something like this. Like we need to just recognize
like that's what
it.
we've been doing, is just ignoring it, when really it is
The reality of life.
Even you guys talking about it now, admitting that you stayed up all night and cried in the parking lot. Like, you're not.
Oh, there was lots of parking lot crying. I didn't realize that was postpartum either. That's what you did as a mother. Like, all my friends were crying in the parking lot too.
Those are small things, but if you give people the space to talk about them and talk about it and treat it, and not just over medicate or whatever, then maybe it can get better at least, and you could prevent those things from happening and recognize when it happens. Because one of those things, I feel like you guys said, you're not recognizing that it's happening to you. And in this case, it's so sad because I read that she admitted herself to the hospital.
Everybody was sounding the alarm.
On New Year's Day, because she was writing it down because she knew these things were happening to her and she still couldn't control it. And so to me, less than like premeditated, horrible, evil person, it's more just like desperate for help, really. Like she had asked for help in every way that she knew how to ask for help.
And her family, right? Everybody
And her family asked for help, and there was just
right. At what point?
Everybody failed her in every.
At what
why
point
is
do we
the
say
system not set up to help her?
Like, right. When? At what point do we determine that she needed inpatient treatment? At what point did it say, like, "Hey, girl, we need you need separation from this. Like, you need some time away. Like, we need some time where you're going to be away from the kids. You get a moment. Plus, we're going to work on the meds and
therapy and
meds. They don't just instantly start working. If you've ever been placed on a depression or anxiety medicine, they will tell you real quick it takes at least 30 to 45 days for it to even get in your system. Some drugs take 3 weeks for you to even feel an effect of it. And so it's not an immediate thing. So if I'm feeling feelings like that, it's not going to go away tomorrow because I popped the pill.
No. And so, what does it say about the system that it failed someone?
Well,
there's a bunch of women
asking for help,
who aren't even recognizing it. So this person is saying, "System, help me, please help me," and nothing is happening because the system's not equipped to recognize or treat that kind of thing.
Which
is sad.
We're seeing an affluent white woman too, right, with health insurance. So, like, imagine what's happening when you don't have health insurance, right? And you don't have maternity leave. So she had maternity leave. And so when you think about it, she had every chance to for someone to step in.
If the system's not going to work on her,
it's not going to
work on anybody else.
Yeah.
What happens with something like this where maybe the medication or something
Well,
made you
psychosis
do
is
it?
temporary,
Can you
right?
get away with a case or get away with a crime if that is present, or no?
Well, it all depends. I mean, there have been cases where postpartum depression and psychosis have been put forward as a defense, and that not be the individual not be accepted as that.
Wow.
And so they're then still tried and convicted for the murder. Then there are individuals who go forward to trial and they're found, not guilty by reason of insanity, which does not mean, a lot of people think that means that you're just walking around out there, but it actually just means that you're going to a mental hospital.
Yeah.
And you're being treated indefinitely until the point that if you are ever deemed to be allowed to be released, which I've seen that happen as well. So it's not where it's just like she's gonna get off.
Right.
I'd be interested in seeing whether or not they're successful on
This defense.
if they're permitted to present it as a defense, because that's not necessarily a given. But two, if they are successful on that defense, and then what that would mean for other women around the world. Because here in Horry County, I've seen a case where postpartum depression and psychosis was actually presented as a defense, where the child actually did not die. A woman had placed her child in the trash can, and the child was later found and was still alive. They presented postpartum depression and psychosis as a defense. The jury did not accept that, and she was convicted. I want to say she either got 22 years or 25 years, and that child did not even die as a result. And so clearly there is
there's a prejudice against it, right?
there's a public, where people don't want to accept that.
That a mother would do that,
Yeah.
right?
Or-
Because we don't talk
or-
about it.
Not even just that they would, but that you'd be permitted to do so, right?
Right.
That
gives you an out.
That gives, yes.
They call like it's some kind of pass.
You don't get
and
this
not some
pass.
kind of-
even
and not like a
sometimes,
real illness.
Or like you had a choice, right? Like you had a choice in all this.
Well, and sometimes moms can work against you too. They can say, "Well, I had postpartum.
Oh.
I never would have done that."
Oh.
And they're
well, women are other women's worst nightmares.
right.
But
So-
it kind of opens up that discussion of why there's this issue with the defenses of women, right? The same thing like batterers, help me out.
battered wife.
Battered wife syndrome, right? Like people don't want to accept that either.
That happens over there, right? Or you have women, and we see this in rape cases and molestation cases, is that that happened to me, right? And I'm not a victim, so she's not a victim, right? Because if I have to accept that happened to you and you're a victim, then I would have to accept it. And I had it worse, that what happened to me and I'm a victim, right?
Yeah.
So we have all this weird psychology stuff at play, but it all comes down to we don't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
We don't talk about it.
Or just acknowledge and accept
Right.
how another woman is feeling, and not always make it a comparison thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
more make it just like
It's not a,
Very much so.
you don't have to compare yourself to all the other moms, but your
let's
feelings are
focus
valid.
on this.
Yeah.
Just on this situation. Yeah. Well, as far as what's in the future for her, what do you guys predict?
I don't think there is a way to predict. I think we just have to watch how the pleadings kind of unfold, right? And what the prosecution's going to go forward with, and there's not a gag order in this case, which is good. So we'll see it unfold in motions and stuff like that. And
Do you feel like she has sufficient evidence right now to show?
I mean, I think the sheer fact that she was going to a doctor, begging for help, raising the flag, they had her on all this medication, which I think the defense attorney, they are arguing that she was over-medicated, right? Because that is a defense in Massachusetts, which I think is brilliant on behalf of because we're not gonna roll the dice with it being iffy, but we're gonna because we know that she was over-medicated, and it wasn't her fault, right?
Right.
Somebody gave it to her. And they were all asking for help. I think that we're just gonna have to wait and see how it plays out.
If it can work in any case, I feel if they
It's
allow
this
her
one.
to
It's
bring
this
the
one,
defense. Yeah, and so
Set up
it's
well.
Set the
sad
precedent
that
for everybody.
it has to be to this point where we see the flaws in the system. Not we, because I'm sure we've noticed them, but the
world.
patriarchy. And then if it can be an example for the criminal justice system too, if she can beat it. But it's sad that we had to get here before people really were wondering if that really is a defense. Was she really suffering from postpartum that made her do all this, or some people out there are going to say she's just a bad mom. It's crazy that that's even would be a question.
Do we have a trial for this or no? Because it just happened.
No, it just happened.
So we
So I
won't
hope
get that
that they
trial
don't-
date for a while,
I hope
right?
they don't bring it, and that it's a
It sets a bad precedent.
learning experience for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Well, this was a long one, but so important, I feel like. So thank you, ladies, for sharing such personal stories with us. We will keep you updated on this case as we try to do for all of the ones that we talk about on the Carolina Justice Report. If you have any questions or you want to reach out, we'd love to hear from you, even if it's just to say your story. Please, you can find us on justiceislovely.com, our website, or we're on all your social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. We would love to hear from you as always. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday.
When life